Good morning, lovely people. Welcome. Yes, welcome to our Mindful Over Matters podcast, where we discuss or curate conversations around intentional living. I am so excited this morning to have these beautiful women in my space. I can't wait to get into their stories. These ladies live what I believe awesome, fulfilled, and vibrant lives. They show up and serve their community, friends, family, and anything else they're attached to. And so I can't wait for us to just unpack their stories and just hear how they gracefully walk through life and life changes, life transitions, life losses. So before we get into the intimacy of their lives, I would just like for each of you to introduce yourself, anything you think is important for us to know. And I got this thing to where I like all of my guests to tell me, because I say this podcast is for intentional living. What does it mean for you to live intentionally? What does that look like? So we'll start with Lamaria. Introduce yourself and anything you want us to know.
My name is Lamaria Smith. I lost my daughter to gun violence a year and a half ago. She graduated from high school with a 5.0. She was in her third year of nursing in college. She just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. I truly didn't understand it. I questioned God. I questioned my faith. But
Lamaria,
it
I'm gonna
truly,
stop you. Lamaria, I want to stop you right there. I know you are ready to get into this story, and
okay.
it's an awesome story. But I just want you to introduce yourself and anything you want us to know about you, because you still are Lamaria, and Lamaria is an awesome person.
Yes. I'm just, I'm a school resource officer right now. I'm giving back to the community in a different way. I'm protecting kids against gun violence and school mass shootings, because that's big in society. I also go out and do different events on gun violence. I try to host my own gun violence event every year, Stop the Shots in Tampa Bay.
Wow.
But pretty much, just trying to be there for other people, other parents that's going through the same thing I'm going through. That's just not as quite as strong as me.
Wow, beautiful. Can you tell me, what does it mean to live intentional?
I guess to live with a purpose and to still find my purpose after this tremendous loss.
Yeah,
I actually had two children involved in this situation, and God spared me with one. So, and I'm about to be a grandmother soon, in about 3 weeks. But just, trying to find my purpose and, trying to keep surviving every day. Get up and keep
beautiful.
going.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lamaria. Dr.
Yes, ma'am.
Liggins.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Uh, my name is Mindy Bull Ligon. I've been a practicing dentist in St. Petersburg for 40 years. I now practice part-time. I have three beautiful adult children. I participate in my community. I've streamlined that a bit since I've gotten older. Uh, I've been more intentional about doing what I feel makes me happy, because I spent a lot of time making sure others were happy and that they were taken care of. So I feel like it's my time, and I'm trying to be really true to myself.
Nice. Yes, absolutely. So, Dr. Liggins, what does it mean for you to live intentional?
I think it's For me, more about self-integrity. I think we tend to, or I tended to not own what I what was truly inside me that needed to be nurtured. I avoided dealing with that, and I'm more about doing that. And I become a bit more selfish, I believe, but in a
Okay.
good way.
Yes. I always say being selfish can also mean self-preservation. And so it's not a negative thing.
Right.
Thank you, Doc. Attorney Karen. Should
Hi.
Skyers? Okay.
Karen is perfect. Good morning,
Okay.
everybody. So happy to be here. My name is Karen Skyers. I'm an Afro Latina from the Bronx. That means I'm a Black
Okay.
Hispanic. So I
Okay.
have been a practicing attorney for over 11 years now. And I've been living in Florida for the past 20 years. I have 3 adult children. I have 2 grandchildren. I just hit the big 50. So just like Dr. Mindy Liggins said, I am living intentionally, very positively, and it's not selfish. It's like self-love, learning to love yourself after you've given yourself to everybody else. And so now taking that internally, I plan on living intentionally with peace, tranquility, and nothing but love. Even though today we're talking about grief and loss, I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to know and that see the light, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, even though that we go through these life issues.
Absolutely. And that's why, I wanted you all to introduce yourself and just tell us about you, something we should know about you, because despite the losses you experience, heavy losses, you are still able to show up and live intentionally. And I feel like maybe those losses have shaped how you show up at this stage of your life. And so I can't wait till we unpack it. But as Karen said, today we are discussing a deep topic called grief and loss. Unfortunately, I feel like grief and loss is the theme of this world right now. I think everybody's dealing with loss of some sort, whether it's on a national level, a universal level, or a personal level. And the world just seems so heavy. And so I really want to use this platform as an opportunity for us to talk about real life experiences that people are walking through or have walked through and could utilize the tools, resources, or just the way you've modeled, going through these experiences. I want to look at some data surrounding grief. There are 2.6 million deaths per year in the United States and 13 million grievers annually, averaging 5 grievers per death. So, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are 2.6 million deaths per year in the U.S. alone. A person dies every 15.2 minutes a day. Every 15.2 minutes a day, someone is losing a loved one or losing their own life. There's an estimated 73,000 children who die every year in the US. And of those children, 83% of them leave surviving siblings. So that was just data on death alone. But as you know, their loss looks like all sorts of things. Loss is, or grief can come from the loss of anything significant, whether it's a person, place, or thing. And so who knows what the data looks like from people who are losing jobs every day or careers, people who are losing relationships or spouses, divorce. Um, and so again, the world just seems really, really heavy. As a clinician, we believe that grief is a complex yet intentional process that our minds, our bodies, and our emotions go through as a result of the loss. They say that there are over 40 life events that a person could grieve over throughout their lifetime, over 40 different life events. Today, I chose 3 women who've experienced at least one or more of these life events in their recent past. And so I want to start with Dr. Liggin. If you could tell us a little about your recent experience with grief and loss.
Um, I lost my sister and my husband within 6 weeks of each other in 2017. My husband was sick and had to have managed care for probably about 5 years before he passed. So the the tethering that you have with his health management was really tough because that went on for a long time, and it impacted, the immediate family, your work life. We were practicing dentists together, and the thing about having a small business and that is a service industry, the impact of losing his ability to go to the office was significant because the income changed, the relationships with the staff, your friends, just your freedom to move about and do things. All of that changed. We managed well because my son fortunately went into the same profession, so he was able to just step right in. But of course, everyone in the immediate family was affected by the ongoing healthcare urgencies that we faced. I mean, we were going to dialysis 3 times a week, and then intermittently there were emergency hospital visits in between the dialysis, and it just took everything took a more increased frequency. So that was very tough. Lots of sleepless nights and lots of wondering why is all of this happening, because of course Reggie died at 66. He got sick at 61, and we had planned so many things to do. Worked hard and thinking we're going to travel and do this and that, and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. So it sounds like, Dr. Liggin, there was a prolonged grieving process. Like it started with his illness, and then going through that. And so the loss was a gradual thing, sounds like, up until his death, that you and your family and even your business had to undergo.
correct. And
Right.
I think in a way it was so many mixed emotions with him passing away, because there was a sense of relief because he was suffering so much. I felt a sense of relief and freedom because it was just like, I felt like I was in prison during this whole process, and you feel cheated, you feel helpless. It was just so many things to deal with, and you just muddle through it the best way you can. And fortunately enough, I had a great support system around me. I had very good friends. He was loved. People tried to help, but nothing really fixes it. You spend a lot of evenings drinking a lot of wine, praying, avoiding folks, trying to just manage your own emotional self. And I think I tended to play a lot of mind games with myself to deal with it. I would pretend that he was going away, that he was on vacation when he passed. I wouldn't even allow myself to think about it. So those were some of the things I did. I did go to grief counseling, really with 2 groups. It was helpful, but I found myself needing to just be on a more personal counseling than with the groups, because I found myself in the group therapies looking at the other people that had lost and hearing their stories and going like, why do you feel like that? I was being judgmental, which wasn't good. I found myself owning the things that were challenging in our marriage and hanging on to some things that weren't so pleasant to help me cope with his loss. You know, I would get angry at him for leaving me. And I would say, "Oh, you did this. You made me so mad when you did so and so." So then I could not breathe because I would make myself angry by thinking about something that wasn't a pleasant thought about our
Mm.
relationship, just to manage not being sad.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
You said a few things that I think were important. One, when you mentioned when Dr. Ligon finally passed, how it was a sense of relief. Like now you were free basically from being that caregiver and the stresses that came with that. A lot of people don't admit that when they are caregivers of people who are ill or who have chronic disabilities or chronic illnesses. There's this sense of guilt and shame, like I shouldn't feel this way. But I tell people to stand in that and validate that, because you're right. Your life is tied to taking care of that other person. And
mhm.
it's almost like you put your needs on the back burner on hold. And so I totally understood. And it's pretty common to hear people who, again, were caregivers of people who were ill to say, when they finally passed, I finally felt free. Yeah. You also mentioned something about the games, what you call the mind games you played. That is real. Loss, the brain tries to really make sense of a traumatic event or a loss. I say our minds are doing two main things every day: problem solving and trying to keep us safe. And it will do it to whatever extent it needs to. So if it needs to go into denial, it will go into denial. If it needs to go into anger, whatever it can do to just keep us getting up every day to do what we need to do, it will do that. And I hear Dr. Ligon that those are some of the things you needed to do in order to just get through your day and cope with the loss of your husband. Wow.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have more questions. Lamaria, would you share your story with grief and loss?
Yes. I lost a 21-year-old daughter a year and a half ago. 7:45 at night is when it happened. I got the call probably about 7:40 from my youngest daughter that had just got shot as well um, prior to that. And we owned a restaurant, and I had saw the girls, and it was like, "Mom, we'll see you when you get home. We're going home." A situation came up where my younger daughter was like, I need to ride over here, to see what a boyfriend was doing at the time. Um, my girls went riding over there, and my daughter circled the block a couple of times. And the one kid that was on the corner decides he wants to shoot up her car. So as she was driving, turning the corner, he shot her driver window out, which shot my daughter in the head, and she lost control of her car. And she was also shot in the abdomen, and my youngest daughter was shot in the leg. My youngest daughter had to find a way to get out the car to go call for help. Tampa Police Department came 2 minutes, respond to the call. Pretty much my daughter was brain dead already. She didn't suffer. Like I said, my daughter was Savannah Mathis. She was 21 years old. She was about to be 22 that next month. We were planning a birthday party, flying to Atlanta, because me and her have neither been on an airplane, and we wanted to do it for the first time. It didn't happen. She got shot December the 1st. I had to take off life support December the 3rd. In life, I heard Dr. Ligon say, she had time to prepare for that situation, and my situation was a split second.
Mhm.
I didn't have time to prepare. I was in shock. I remember being at the hospital when I had to take off life support. I didn't even stick around when they took her off, because the fact of seeing her take her last breath and then putting a sheet over her head, I just couldn't bear it. The
Yeah.
last time I saw her, she was warm. Her eyes were rolled in the back of her head because she's pretty much brain dead. But my body went in a sense of shock, like it's not really happening. It's a nightmare.
Mhm.
Um, It's been really hard. I thank God that, he spared me one to keep going, because had it been both, I don't really think I'd be right here talking to y'all.
Mhm.
Uh, I was at the graveyard every day, still trying to get a little bit better about that. I'm out there pulling weeds, whatever I can do, because in my mind, it's like I'm cleaning her room. I'm still being a mother to her, even though she's not here.
Mhm.
Also, to go back on what Dr. Liggins said, you tell yourself she's out of town, she's in college. I see her Christmas, I see her, Thanksgiving or whatever. But it comes a point in time, as time prevails, that you know what, you're not gonna see them again.
Mhm.
My biggest thing is being a witness to other people. I also recently just went through a divorce 6 months ago, 14 years. Um, So my challenge dealing with this death is I had to do it by myself. I needed that
Mhm.
self-love, because I fell out of love with myself.
Mhm.
Prior to my daughter passing, I always took on other people's problems, and I never cared for me. So I think God allowed me to go through this process alone, so I can focus more on Him, so I can be a better example to other people. Because, like I said, I'm in a better place now, but it's still a struggle, because it's these cell phones, memories pop up, videos pop up, pictures pop up, and it's hard. It makes you
Mhm.
just be like coming back to reality. That's the past. That's all you got left. But my biggest thing is, trying to be there for others at this point, as well as myself. But getting people to understand the way God work, and if you're a true Christian, God allow us to borrow our children. I feel like, as a parent, um, He allowed me, while she's on this side, to return her back to Him. And even though my daughter died to gun violence, I have a bigger peace knowing that she went to heaven. She was a good person. That's why she wanted to be a nurse, because she cared about other people more than she cared about herself.
Mhm.
Um, so that's another thing that's helping me grieve better, just knowing that she's in heaven. And if I keep doing what I got to do on this side in this journey, I will see my daughter again.
Right.
And like I said, I'm very thankful. My youngest daughter survived it. She's pregnant with a little girl. She's also due on my birthday. We're naming my
Oh,
granddaughter after my daughter that we lost. So
okay.
I'm starting to see a little bit of the positive through all the negative. And like I tell a lot of people in minorities, we have to get counseling. We're in denial about we don't need it. We do. We do.
Mhm.
I've joined other groups, where it's other mothers and fathers that's going through what I've been through. It made it a lot easier, because you tend to feel like, wow, you're in this alone. Why is not fair? Other people got to go through this. Or what did I
Yeah.
do in life to deserve it? But like I said, we all have an appointed time to leave here. We don't know the time and date. The only thing I can say is be ready. So, I appreciate coming on the show, being able to, to share my story. But like I
Absolutely.
said, that's all I
Yeah.
have.
Wow. 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 What you made the point, when Dr. Ligon, she was able to prepare for the loss of her husband, and you said it was a split second for you. What was that split second like when you got that call from your daughter? What was that like for you?
I didn't believe it was true. One,
Mhm.
I panicked. I live out in Apollo Beach area, and the incident happened by UT downtown. So I immediately did a U-turn. I remember being on the crosstown that night, and it's a curve, and I literally almost flew off the crosstown trying to get to the scene. When I got to the scene, I saw the yellow tape, and I already knew that it wasn't going to be a positive, outcome. I saw my daughter car wreck. I saw my daughter car shot up. And I tell you, I know there's a God, because He had to be right there with me. Because I mean, just for me to be a survivor and here to talk today, I mean, I've
Mhm.
had a situation in St. Pete where a parent lost a child and a grandchild at the same time, and that parent committed suicide not even a week later.
Yes.
So it's very hard. And when you try to talk to other people, they don't understand it. If you haven't been through
Mhm.
it, you don't understand it. And
No.
it was just hard. It's just I had
Mhm.
to deal with something for the rest of my life that I heard about in a split second. So
Right, right. It's obvious, Damaria, that you had what it you had in that moment whatever it was you needed to be resilient through that situation. There was something already planted in you to get you through such a tragic, traumatic, um, unexpected loss of the magnitude that you experienced. Whether it was your faith, whether it was prior things you've been through, there was something strong in you that equipped you to get through something that traumatic. And I know you kind of on a personal level, and just, just to hear you be able to talk about it and talk about it with such strength and grace is something that's beautiful.
Yes.
And I'll have certainly have more questions for you for sure. Uh, Karen, can you share your story with us?
Absolutely. And in full transparency, this is the first time now that I'm actually making a public statement about grief and what I've dealt with, as far as losing my father in 2003. So in April of 2003, must have been about 3 o'clock in the morning. I get a call, and it's my cousin from Puerto Rico calling to tell us that my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, passed away. So one, the shock, because you can't get on a plane at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so that is how this process for me started. It was the first time that I had experienced death. I was 29 years old. I was turning 30 the following month. But at the same time that happened, I was going through a divorce. My 6-year-old son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And my father announced that he had prostate cancer. And so, and that was in June. So lost my grandmother in April, and then June, my father announced his cancer, and then September 3rd of 2003, he passed away. So unlike Lamaria and Miss Mindy had a long process, and Miss Lamaria had an instant process. Mine was very short, kind of just like 3 to 6 month process that I had to deal with this. But what ended up happening was my father was my best friend. And so immediately for me, it was just kind of, take care of everybody, take care of the family, make sure that everyone is good, and you deal with this later, because my body and my mind went into a reaction mode that was just defense, right? Because otherwise, like Miss Lamaria said, I guarantee you that I would have, and probably deal with that on a daily basis, is contemplating suicide. And why I say that and why it's important is because we don't talk about mental health, and we don't talk about how important it is for us to, we pray about our physical health, right? Like, dear God, make me skinny. Dear God, fix my hair. Dear God, do all this stuff. But we never say, dear God, or whoever we worship, help me deal with what's going on mentally, not physically, right? Because mentally we go through things. And like Miss Lamaria said, you don't want to just talk to anybody. People don't understand. Some people want you to be on some kind of timeline to say, well, damn, you're not over it yet. And, it's been 20 years and I'm not over it. My friends still check on me every September 3rd, every Father's Day, and every May 13th, which was his birthday, because they know what I dealt with. And so it's a stressful and emotional crisis when you go through these things. And I think that if we get to a place where we acknowledge those feelings, right, and we don't beat ourselves up and think about what Miss Dr. Liggins said, right? Like, I self-medicated. I had to drink wine. I had to drink liquor. Like, there were no days that I can go back and think about, how do I fool myself into getting rid of this pain? Right. And so for me, it was just a lot of little steps, and it's a step for me every single day. I'm taking care of my mom, who's 84, and then I'm looking to have to deal with that with her, and we don't know how long. Right. And so in anticipation of death, I also stress myself out, because I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen if something happens to my mom? Then I'm really going to have no parents. And, so you anticipate a lot of these things. And your body has a lot of emotion. So your mind is messed up, and then we get paralyzed, right? Because it takes physical attributes onto that. So there are days where, I don't want to get out of the bed. I can stay in the bed for 24 to 48 hours. I don't want to answer the phone. I don't want to go to work. There are a lot of things that people don't know and understand about what grief looks like for each individual. And grief is individual for
Right.
everybody. So
Mhm.
I'm crying. I'm like sniffling because I'm listening to Dr. Lian and Lamaria's story, right? Like, and I'm listening, and I'm like, I feel it. I feel it. I know. I'm sorry, but again, there's people that are not going to have the support system that we have. They don't have the mental capacity to even be able to deal with this. So, like Miss Lamaria said, you got to get some therapy. You got to go to grief counseling, and you got to be able to let this out.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yes, yes, yes to a lot of what you said. And just before we go into our brief break, Karen, you said, once your grandfather passed, like you went into work mode and like you went into making the arrangements and doing, being that leader that I'm sure you are in your everyday life. You didn't know how to cut it off, even in that moment for you to grieve, because you were experiencing a loss just as everybody else around you was. But you didn't sit in that. You allowed yourself, I'm going to say that, you allowed yourself to show up for everybody else and do what you needed to do because, hey, somebody had to do it, right?
Right. It was my grandmother, for correction.
Your
But
grandmother.
however, yes, and you're right. But in that same sense of putting everybody else before me, 8 years later, because I didn't go to grief counseling, because I didn't do the things that I was supposed to do, because I didn't seek out the things that were going to make me a healthy and whole person,
Yes.
I suffered for that. Right. And
Right.
so now I think that as someone who's been through it, as you said, 40 life events, I'm going to go write down all my life events after this because I think I have about 40 life events at this stage, right? I'm
Yes.
50 now. And so I think what ends up happening, Zanita, is we put ourselves into so many different spaces and places so that we are able to cope, right? We go nonstop, we run here, we run there, we do this for everybody else. But my advice, because I went through this, was to seek counseling immediately. Seek therapy. If you're into medical marijuana, use it. If you think that you need prescription medication, use it. Like I grew up in an environment where you're not supposed to do drugs for any kind of reason, right? You're not supposed to drink alcohol, but people do it. But I'm just saying, find a balance to be able to cope and make that also a part of your life strategy. How do I deal with this now? How do I deal with this moving forward? And how will I deal with future grief? Because again, we talked about, and I know Ms. Lamaria talked about this, and I know we're going into break, but we have to talk about the increased rates of suicide among Black and Hispanic women and why this is happening, why this is a public health issue. And again, it goes back to, you just pray about it. It's going to be all right. It takes a lot more than that, ladies and gentlemen. And that is why I'm here with you today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? As a grief counselor, when I have a client who has some of those what I call short-term pain relievers, such as drinking alcohol, food, maybe even sex, I don't judge them for it. We identify what those are, and I say, okay, what's the safest one? If you feel like you need to do something, what's the safest one to help you get through this? And it may be, okay, I'll just settle with wine until I can get that person to a place to where they're ready to use other coping strategies that may be a little bit more healthier. I roll with them with that. And so, yes, we tap into whatever coping strategy we knew before the loss to kind of help get us through the loss. But even for those who prolong their grief process to where they just went in grind mode for a year to 2 or 8 years, that's okay too. You did what you needed to do, but are you ready now to really grieve? And so we are going to take a short break for our artist of the week, and then we will roll right back in with more conversation.
Yes, indeed. The blast artist of the week is Lily Lorraine, and this is called Be Like Me. Let's check it out. Yes, indeed. And that was Lily Lorraine with Be Like Me, and produced by Soul Res Music. And if you are an independent artist or even a spoken word poet or up and coming comedian that is looking for exposure, You can go to blastmusic247.com and register for free. That's blastmusic247.com, changing the industry one artist at a time. All right, ladies, back to you.
All right, all right. So we are going to jump back into the conversation. You, you ladies are awesome, and just to hear your stories is heavy, but to hear where you are now and how you've been able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and how you're able to tap into your pain and create passions around it, or just see the beauty despite the loss, is what I tell my clients. That's what helps you get through. That's what helps you keep waking up in the morning. And so we said that grief is an emotional state that supports our adaptation to the loss. Grief is supposed to help us adapt to the loss. So it's a process. As clinicians, we say that there are 5 stages of grief. We believe that these stages are no longer sequential. We used to say you go through these stages in sequences. Now we feel them to be rather fluid. So some people experience the 5 stages of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then the final stage, what we would like to believe is a final stage of acceptance. What stage, ladies, do you feel like you immediately went into upon the initial loss of your loved one? What stage? Was it anger, denial, bargaining, depression, or you felt like you accepted the loss initially?
Oh, I can start. I can tell you, I was angry. I was angry at God. I was angry at the world. I thought that it was very unfair for a beautiful man that came to this country with one pair of shoes that didn't fit, to work his way as a taxi cab driver, as a social worker, to become a medical licensed physician, to take care of other people. Was his life was cut off at the age of 62, so suddenly, maybe 6 months right after he retired. And so I was pissed. I'm walking around looking at everybody like, why you alive? You a crackhead. Why you alive? You're a rapist. Why are you alive? You're a murderer. So I'm just going through so much anger. So anger was my first, and I can't tell you that it's gone away. It has definitely subsided, but angry at a different state. Now certainly have leveled over to acceptance of stage 5. But again, none of those 5 stages of grief have bypassed me in any way.
Yes. Okay. That was honest. And again, pretty common, to where we find reason like, well, this just doesn't make sense. Why would you take this person and not this person? How is it that we start grappling, with trying to make sense of the loss? Dr. Lian, what stage would you say you initially started in?
Denial was the way I dealt with it initially. But you do come to a realization that it is what it is. It has happened. You can't change that. And I find myself as a fixer kind of personality. I've always been fixing stuff for myself and others, the problem solver. But this one I couldn't fix. So the adaptation you have to make from something that you couldn't control was huge for me. So I made up my mind to start stepping into his spaces. So I started doing things that he did. I started fishing. He was an avid fisherman. He hung out at the cigar bars downtown. So I started going there, and it was really helpful to me how his friends that he hung out with embraced me. I mean, they really took care of me. They said, okay, here's this middle-aged lady has started coming to the cigar bar, and we're going to take care of her. And they did take care of me. I never had to worry about getting to my car. I never had to worry about a place to sit. I mean, I had a setup when I would walk in the door. The owners he was very close to, they really took good care of me and his
Nice.
fraternity, the dental community. Um, we had a big network of friends and professional relationships, and everybody really did their best to try to help. Um, at the time, it didn't feel like it took care of it, but it was just accepting, or the wound was being closed very, very slowly.
Hmm.
So all of those things at the end helped. But I will tell you, the most hurtful part of the loss was how the relationship did change with what was normal in our couple's life. I found that my biggest struggle because um, as a couple, we hung out with couples,
Mhm.
and the way you were received after you lost your spouse, it was very hurtful. People didn't want you around. I don't know if they didn't want you around. They didn't invite you in the same sense. So I found that very difficult. That I had to forge my own way as a single woman, which was
Wow.
something I had been married my whole adult life. I married at 23. I was married for 40 years.
Wow.
So it was a very different world for me. And I was very, very vulnerable. And thank God for uh, folks that really um, were watching over me and not, not letting folks try to get into my space that were didn't have the right
Didn't
intention.
belong. Yeah.
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 So that happened because you are very vulnerable and folks come after you. I had an old acquaintance who surfaced, and uh, he basically was trying to shake me down for money. And you're very
Hmm.
vulnerable at the time, so you have to really own that you are in a weak mode, and you're
Yes.
not used to being in this weak mode. But thank God for people that knew and could see the um, the efforts going that way, and they said, "Listen, Lindy, you don't fool with him. Don't fool with him. He's bad news. He is not what you need. You just step back from that." And I listened. I'm so glad I was able to listen.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, Doc, you did something that it's not very common when someone loses a significant other, to where they submerge themselves into the places or the lives that their significant other was in. A lot of times they want to completely be avoidant of it because it's too triggering, it's too painful. But for you, you showed up in those spaces. And in that, you found supports that you probably never would have imagined you would have. You found embracings that kept you connected to maybe your husband in a certain type of way. Wow, that's
Hmm.
beautiful. But then you also, unfortunately, it came because you weren't necessarily as welcome into your prior relationships or spaces like the couples you had, but you were able to find your footing as a single woman or a widow. You were able to find your footing and navigate what that would look like. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yes, that's awesome. Lamaria, what stage would you say?
Definitely anger, definitely shock. Um, One of the biggest stories for me, I was a single mother to both of my girls. And the fact that you try to be respectful and call people that shouldn't really be there in a time that you had to make a decision in 2 days, and expecting those people to be supportive and say, you know what, we're here. Even though I haven't been here, we're here. But the fact that I got disrespect at the hospital on every decision that I made, but with
Mm,
my daughter, I've always been the only one to make that decision. And
mm,
it's just funny how sometimes family and friends will treat you And this time, you tend to see the real side of people. And, when my daughter was here, she had a lot of knowledge. She had a lot of common sense. And Mom, she really don't like you. Mom, she really. And when I tell you my daughter passed and I saw what she was saying with each person she called out, it's just amazing. You don't have to respect me, but respect my situation. And I dealt with a lot of people just not caring, and it was just sad. And then this kind of situation breaks up families. You think it'll bring them closer, but not always, because everybody cope with the situation different. So then it's learning how to be strong for everybody else. And even though you're sad, you still got to put on that happy face. And like I said, I had a 19-year-old child that saw everything happen and just trying to be strong for her. But I tell you, Zanita, personally, with your family, your best friend and everything, when I tell you, we had an event in St. Pete, and you know what I'm talking about. And that was me and my daughter first night out. And when I tell y'all made it beautiful for us. I mean, we needed that so much. Nice. And, it's just, like she said, having a good support system, because I didn't get that from my family. I got it from some of them, but not all of them.
Right.
I'm trying to think, like I said, just pretty much trying to cope. It's something I got to deal with for the rest of my life. You could be in the mall and have those triggers. You see your mom with her daughter and they picking out a wedding dress. That'll never be me. Just wanting to see what my daughter would accomplish walking across that stage as an RN. I'm never going to see that. But I get on my youngest daughter. They both are in school for nursing. Like Miss Liggins said, Dr. Liggins said, I want her to go back to school and be that nurse for your sister that couldn't do it. Also, my daughter's last day on earth, she said, Mom, I want to open a daycare because she worked for Bright Horizons, which is they take care of the nurses, the surgeons, and the doctors at Tampa General. And she also was a surgical tech at Tampa General. So I made it up in my mind to go to school. So I've been in school getting my director's license, and I graduated this month. And when I tell you I'm opening this daycare because that was her last request on this earth, and I'm naming it Savannah's Heavenly Touch Child Care Center. So when I tell you it's going to be the first Christian daycare, because they have took God out of schools, and my intention is to catch them when they start walking. I mean, we're going to pray over lunch, we praying over snacks, we praying, when they get there, when they leave, for their safety, whatever, and I plan on giving a discount, but you have to sign a waiver saying we're going to teach your child about God. And if you want that discount, you're going to sign that waiver, and that's how it goes. Because one thing about it, when we did our first birthday celebration at the graveyard, with my daughter, all her friends was like, man, Savannah used to call us, say, you know what, God got us. When he closed one door, he opened another one. She was a big time Christian. And I really got to keep that going. And that was her biggest thing, witnessing the kids and being there, because, everybody's family and household, is not up to date. Some of these kids are missing meals. I'm doing hot meals. I'm doing a pantry where they can get clothes. They can get help for single moms that don't have it all. You shouldn't have to lose your child to DCF. I'm willing to sit here and help and go above and beyond. And that's what my daughter would have wanted.
Beautiful. That's awesome. Lamaria, you had to make a tough decision to take your daughter off of life support. And like you said, there were people who sound like they weren't on board with that. And you recognize everybody grieves differently. So maybe part of them feeling like they could hold on to her was to keep her living. But you made a tough decision. And you had to stand in that despite the controversy or despite the pushback you may have received from friends and loved ones. I can only imagine how that could have made the grieving process even more difficult. But now you hear things coming full circle, and you are able to take the passion that your daughter had and infuse it with your pain and create something that you feel passionate about in order to just keep her name and her own personal mission and vision for her life. That's wonderful. That's how we grieve gracefully.
And I also fought in Tampa too as well. She has her own bench. She's the first person to have a bench at Trinity Lane Park.
Wow.
So I thank God for Orlando Gould City Councilman Jane Casimir of Florida. But they made it possible. But like I tell these parents, I was a good mom. I was a loving mom. I was an overprotective mom. But I couldn't protect her. You know what I'm saying? And, I was upset with God about it, because I always prayed, keep them safe. We had drills just in case, call when you got home. I'm checking cameras, make sure they made it home. But like I said, you just have to accept the things that you can't change, and it can either make you better or it can make you better.
That's
And in
right.
this situation, wasn't an easy situation for me, but I had to let it make me better. And I tell a lot of people that, we can sit here, we can grieve, we can waddle in pity. It ain't going to get you nowhere. The only thing I can encourage you to do is do the counseling, talk to God on a regular, but just find ways to keep that loved one name going. Like I said, she was the first one to get this bench, and I fought hard for it, and I wasn't giving up.
Mhm.
And hopefully, I can name a street after her. Hopefully, I can name a park after her. Like, I'm not
Yes.
gonna stop. People gonna know about my daughter Savannah because she was a good person, and she deserves that. A
Yes.
lot of people, when we lose loved ones, we tend to move on in life and we forget about them. But I just can't do that. For the rest of my life, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure everybody knew who my daughter was.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful. I remember hearing, I was watching Super Soul Sunday, and the guest on there, she was saying tragedy is the great professor that knocks on everybody's door. And when it comes to your door, it's not our job to say, why me? But it's our job to say, what is it you're here to teach me? What is it I'm here to learn? You become a student in that classroom of loss. And so, in that, it sounds like all of you were able to find the message behind the loss, find a, find a reason to keep living and thriving despite the loss. And that's the difference between those who don't do well in their grieving process and those who actually flourish in their grieving process. Like Karen said, grief looks different for everybody. Your process is your process. It doesn't have to be rushed, but if there is going to be, if you want to find yourself on the other side of grief, it takes intentionality. It does. And so I tell people, seek support, connect with people who are willing to be patient with you through your grieving process. When we lose things, people say all kind of stuff to you. You're not over it yet, or you just got to keep going, or you've been through worse. People try and do things to help us feel better, but it really produces the opposite. But seek support from people who know how to support you, whether they're paid people, professionals, or they're some of your closest friends or families, sometimes strangers. I found some of my biggest supports from people I didn't even know. Um, Acknowledge the feelings that come up. If it's sadness, acknowledge the sadness. If it's anger, acknowledge the anger. Become an investigator of those feelings. When those feelings come up, when I feel sad, I say, okay, what is it I'm sad about? Why am I sad right now? I want to know what it is I'm feeling and why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. Then take it a step further. What do I need to get me through this? So become an investigator of your feelings. Practice love and compassion. How hard are we on ourselves to get over things, or, oh, we shouldn't be this, or, I should know better, or whatever. But when do we practice love and compassion for the things we're going through? How can you support you the same way you would support a friend? And then be patient with your process. It is your process. So if it takes a year, if you find yourself over the loss in a month, it's your process. Ladies, before we close, any final advice you want to give to our viewers?
And I say one more thing too.
Absolutely.
The biggest thing I have going on next for me as well. We have trial coming up. And I've been to 4 court dates, and I have to sit up here. And at the time, he was 19 years old when he killed my daughter. He's 21 now. But I have to face him all the
Yeah.
time, and walking around with that anger, is another thing. And I had to go to God, and I had to ask God to give me that forgiveness on him, because I'm
Yeah.
not going to walk around and let that control my life no more, that you killed my daughter for no reason. So
Yes.
God allowed me to forgive him. He's going to pay for what he did, but I forgive him. I can't walk around with that hate no more. And I just,
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people's like, I don't get you. You different. You weird. But if you understand that most of the time when you walk around with hate, it consumes
Yeah.
you. It don't consume the other person.
That's right. That's
And
right.
just moving forward, like I said, I appreciate y'all allowing me to come on the show. I hope I touched somebody, or somebody heard this story or whatever, because it's hard. It's a process. And at life, we don't get books. We just try to do the best we can by what we know.
That's
Mm-hmm.
right. That's right. And thank you for sharing your story, Lamaria. Anyone
Yes,
else?
ma'am.
Um, I think my last piece of advice would be to take it easy on yourself. Um, I think I'm my own greatest critic, and you just have to be kind to yourself.
Mm,
And when I say that, I'm saying emotionally, let yourself take it easy with you. Because I think we tend to, especially women, mothers, you tend to have so many hats you wear and you own each child's problems and joys, and you don't allow yourself your own space. So, allowing yourself to have space and giving yourself grace is, I think, really something that I learned throughout my life.
nice. Absolutely. Karen.
And I'll wrap up real quickly. Thank you so much for your time. Dr. Ligon, thank you for your story. Miss Lamaria, I'm so happy to be here with
Thank
you.
you.
You are amazing. I'll be happy
Thank you.
to support you during that trial. Zanita, thank
Thank
you
you.
for having me on. Thank you for all of the listeners. I'm going to echo what Dr. Ligon said. We're always very hard on ourselves. And so my advice is to be gentle with yourself, right? We parent, we're friends, we're present for other people, but we're never present for ourselves. Like, how often do we tell ourselves, you're beautiful, I love you, you're pretty, your nose is nice, something, to internalize what it is about you that you love, normalize the grief process. Grieving is natural, it's normal, we all go through it. I pray for each and every one of you that have gone through this. I'm open and honest about what I've gone through. I don't expect that life won't throw me another few pebbles on the road, but I expect them, and I just hope that I continue to be able to pray on my mental health, to be covered in the blood of Jesus, if I can say that.
Amen.
And I will talk to y'all, and I will see y'all, and I will pray for you all. Thank you so much for
Thank
the
you.
time and the opportunity to discuss my grief process and loss.
Listen, the pleasure was all mine, certainly. To my viewers, listen, as my guest said, practice forgiveness, loving kindness, gentleness, and show up for you. Whether you're experiencing a loss today or you will experience one tomorrow, these are tools and nuggets that these three ladies have been able to use to get them through their grieving process gracefully. So thank you so much. So we will see y'all next week at 10. Not y'all. Well, y'all can show up if y'all
I'll
want.
definitely
But
be back.
10 a.m. on next Saturday. I don't know what we talk about, but the topic is going to be great, and I'm going to have great guests. So thank you. Y'all have a great Saturday.
You
Thanks,
too.
Prince.